The sun barely kissed the horizon as Jack walked down the familiar street, his heart heavy with memories. The crisp morning air carried the scent of damp earth, a reminder of the countless walks he once took, but never alone. His footsteps echoed against the empty sidewalk, a stark contrast to the past when a pair of eager paws padded alongside him. Jack shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. It had been 2 years. 2 years since Max disappeared. 2 years since he'd lost the only thing that ever truly mattered. He had tried to move on, but some things, some losses, refused to be buried with time. A distant rumble pulled him from his thoughts. The morning train was approaching, its headlights slicing through the early fog. Jack sighed and quickened his pace, knowing the train would pass the crossing just ahead. But as he neared the tracks, something made him stop. A dog stood in the middle of the railway. Not just any dog. Jack's breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred as he took a hesitant step forward. The train was closing in, its whistle shrieking into the still morning air. But the dog didn't move. Jack's heart pounded. The fur, the stance, the familiar way the dog held his head. Couldn't be. But deep down, Jack knew. It was Max, and he was standing directly in front of the speeding train. Jack's legs felt frozen, his mind racing faster than the train barreling toward them. "Move!" he shouted. But the dog stood firm, eyes locked onto him. Memories crashed over him like waves. 2 years ago, on a night not much different from this morning, he and Max had gone for their usual evening walk. The stars had barely begun to twinkle when a car came speeding out of nowhere. Jack barely had time to react before the screech of tires filled the air. And then silence. When Jack scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his ears, Max was gone. Not a trace of him. No barking. No limping away. Just gone. For weeks, Jack searched. Posters. Online posts. Late-night walks. Calling Max's name into the empty streets. But hope faded, replaced by a hollow ache that settled deep in his chest. Losing Max wasn't just losing a pet. It was losing the one constant in his life. Max had been there when everything else fell apart. When his father walked out, when his mother fell sick, when he stood alone at her funeral. Max was his shadow, his protector, his only family. And then, just like that, he was gone too. Jack had convinced himself Max was dead. What other explanation was there? A dog doesn't just vanish without a trace. Yet here he was, standing on the train tracks. The train's whistle screamed through the air, jerking Jack back to the present. He couldn't lose Max again. Without thinking, Jack lunged forward. The metal rails vibrated beneath his feet as the train thundered closer. He reached out, his fingers grazing Max's fur. The dog didn't flinch. And in that moment, just before impact, Jack saw it. Max wasn't just standing there. He was protecting something. Jack's eyes darted past him. And that's when he saw the reason why Max refused to move. A small, trembling bundle lay just beyond the dog's paws. Jack's heart stopped. A puppy. The train was only seconds away. Jack's instincts took over. Without thinking, he dove forward, his arms wrapping around Max as he grabbed the tiny puppy in one swift motion. The train roared past, inches away, the force of the wind nearly knocking him off his feet. The ground trembled beneath him as metal thundered against metal, and for a brief, terrifying moment, everything felt like it was spinning out of control. Then silence. The train was gone. Jack gasped for breath, his arms still tightly around Max. The puppy let out a small whimper, nuzzling deeper into Max's fur. Jack's chest heaved as he looked down at them, his heart racing. Max, his Max, was really here. Jack pulled back slightly, his fingers trembling as he cupped Max's face. His fur was matted, thinner than before, but those eyes, those deep, familiar eyes, hadn't changed. Max? His voice cracked. The dog let out a soft whine and did something that shattered what little control Jack had left. He lifted his nose and gently pressed it against Jack's palm. The same way he always did when Jack came home, when he was scared, when he needed comfort. Jack choked back a sob. It was him. Tears blurred his vision as he hugged Max close, his fingers tangling in his fur. Max let out a slow, deep breath, as if he had been waiting for this moment just as much as Jack had. But then, Jack's eyes fell to the small creature curled up against Max's side. The puppy, tiny, frail, and covered in dirt. The little dog barely moved. Jack gently placed his hand on its chest. A heartbeat weak, but steady. Max had been protecting this puppy. Jack swallowed hard, realization crashing over him like a tidal wave. 2 years. 2 years apart. And yet, Max had never stopped being the protector he always was. Jack ran his fingers through Max's fur, his voice shaking. "What happened to you, buddy?" Max blinked slowly, his tail giving a weak wag. Jack knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of the story. Jack sat on the cold ground, his arms still wrapped around Max, his mind racing. The puppy stirred slightly, letting out a faint whimper. Max had risked everything. Not for himself, but for this tiny creature. Jack swallowed the lump in his throat and whispered, "Where have you been, boy?" Max didn't answer, of course. But the way he leaned into Jack, the way his tired body relaxed just a little, told him enough. Jack carefully scooped up the puppy, cradling it against his chest. It was smaller than he expected, barely a few weeks old. Ribs poked through thin fur, and its little body trembled, exhausted and weak. Max let out a soft, tired huff, his head resting against Jack's knee. The crowd that had gathered near the train tracks slowly began to disperse, murmuring in awe at what they had just witnessed. Jack barely noticed. His world had shrunk down to the two souls in front of him. The dog he thought he had lost forever and the fragile life Max had sworn to protect. Memories flooded back. How many nights had Jack called Max's name into the empty streets? How many times had he sat awake, hoping, praying for a sign? And all this time, Max had survived. But where? How? Jack blinked rapidly, his voice breaking as he whispered, "You never stopped waiting, did you?" Max's tail gave the slightest wag. His body still weak, but his spirit unbroken. Jack wiped his eyes and took a shaky breath. He wasn't going to lose him again. Gently, he lifted Max into his arms. The dog didn't resist, his weight heavier than Jack remembered, but familiar in the way that mattered. The puppy curled against his chest, its tiny heartbeat fluttering against his palm. Jack stood, looking down at the tracks one last time. Max had stopped that train. He had planted himself between danger and the helpless, refusing to move until someone came. Jack realized something then, something so obvious he felt foolish for not seeing it sooner. Max had been waiting for him, not just waiting, searching, hoping, fighting, for 2 years. Jack's throat tightened, but he held his head high as he turned toward home. This time he wasn't walking alone. Jack carried Max and the tiny puppy home, his heart still racing from everything that had happened. He had dreamed of this moment for so long, finding Max again, holding him close. But now that it was real, something felt off. Max was weak, too weak. His breathing was uneven, his steps slower than before. Jack tried to convince himself that it was just exhaustion, that Max just needed food, warmth, and rest. But deep down, a familiar fear gnawed at him. Once they got home, Jack set the puppy down on a soft towel, carefully wrapping it up. The little dog barely stirred, but at least its chest was still rising and falling. Max, however, collapsed onto the floor with a heavy sigh. His eyes fluttered open and shut as if even staying awake was a struggle. Panic gripped Jack's chest. No, not after everything. Not now. He grabbed his phone with trembling fingers and dialed the vet. His voice was uneven, urgent. "I just found my dog. He's weak. He won't eat. I don't know what's wrong, but I need help. Please." The receptionist must have heard the desperation in his voice because she didn't hesitate. "Bring him in immediately." Jack didn't waste a second. He carried Max back to the car, gently placing him in the passenger seat. The puppy rested in his lap, wrapped tightly in the towel. Jack could feel its tiny heartbeat, slow but steady, against his palm. Max, despite his exhaustion, turned his head slightly and let out a faint huff. His eyes met Jack's, And for the first time in years, Jack truly saw him. Not just as the dog he lost, but as the fighter he had always been. Jack clenched the steering wheel. "Hold on, buddy. Just a little longer." The drive to the vet was a blur. When they arrived, a team of techs rushed Max and the puppy inside. Jack paced the waiting room, his mind a storm of memories, regrets, and desperate prayers. After what felt like an eternity, the vet finally walked in. Her face was kind but serious. She held out a clipboard, her voice gentle yet firm. "Max is a survivor, but he's been through a lot. His heart is weak, Jack. He needs treatment, time, and a lot of care." Jack swallowed hard, nodding. "Whatever it takes." The vet gave a small, reassuring smile. "I thought you'd say that," Jack exhaled, gripping the edge of the seat. Max wasn't out of danger. But one thing was certain. Jack wasn't going to lose him again. Not without a fight. Jack didn't leave Max's side. For days, he stayed at the vet's office, sleeping in the chair beside Max's kennel, waking at every small sound. The puppy, whom he now called Lucky, was slowly recovering, gaining strength with every passing hour. But Max was different. Some days he seemed stronger. His tail would wag a little. His ears would perk up at Jack's voice. Other days he barely moved, his breathing shallow, his body exhausted. Jack refused to give up. Every morning, he sat beside Max, stroking his fur, whispering promises. "I'm not letting you go, buddy. Not again." Max, despite his weakness, always looked at Jack with the same unwavering loyalty. Weeks passed. Max's condition improved, slowly but surely. He was still fragile, still tired, but there was light in his eyes again. One evening, Jack sat on the floor with Lucky curled in his lap, watching Max rest. The vet had warned him. Max's heart wasn't as strong as it used to be. He might not have years left. But Jack wasn't thinking about time. He was thinking about second chances. Max had waited for him for 2 years. Now Jack would be the one waiting. For every small step, every wag of the tail, every moment of joy Max had left. A few weeks later, Jack took Max and Lucky back to the train station. Max hesitated at the platform, his paws firmly planted on the ground. Jack knelt beside him, running his hand over the dog's back. "You were waiting for me here, weren't you?" Max blinked up at him, then did something that nearly broke Jack's heart all over again. He nudged his nose against Jack's palm, just like he always had. Tears welled in Jack's eyes. For 2 years, Max had never given up. Now neither would he. As the sun set behind them, Jack turned to go home, this time with his best friend by his side, and a tiny new life trotting alongside them. Jack knew one thing for sure. They had all been given a second chance. And this time he wouldn't waste it. Some bonds can't be broken, not by time, not by distance, not even by loss. Jack had spent 2 years believing Max was gone forever. But Max never stopped waiting, never stopped hoping. Even when the world moved on, he never gave up on the person he loved most. How many others are out there, waiting in shelters, on cold streets, in forgotten corners of the world, waiting for someone to give them a second chance. Jack didn't just find Max that day. He found a reminder of what loyalty, love, and unwavering devotion truly mean. And maybe that's something we all need to remember, because sometimes life gives us a second chance, but it's up to us to take it. So if you believe in second chances, consider adopting, consider rescuing, consider opening your heart to a life that's waiting for you. Because just like Max, there's a soul out there that hasn't stopped hoping. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for you. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more stories.